Imagine you're posted at the edge of an empire. It's cold, quiet, isolated. You're not in a city. You're not near a village. You're stationed on a wall that stretches across mountains like a scar on the earth. You're a soldier, a watcher. Your job is simple. Watch the horizon, send reports, light the signals if danger comes, and then, one day, the signals stop. No smoke, no flags, no messenger. At first, it's easy to explain. Bad weather, a delayed courier, a minor issue. But the silence doesn't break. It grows. Days become weeks. And when men are finally sent to investigate, they don't find a battlefield. They don't find bodies. They find something worse. They find nothing. Because the garrison is gone. Not killed, not captured, gone. More than 200 soldiers, trained, armed, stationed in multiple watchtowers, vanish without leaving behind a trace of what happened. This story has been whispered about for centuries. Some call it a tragedy. Some call it a cover-up. Others say it wasn't human at all. Tonight, we follow the trail of a historical disappearance connected to the Great Wall of China. A disappearance so clean, so complete, that even the official records barely speak of it. And when an empire refuses to explain something, that's when you should pay attention. Now, let's go back. Back to an era where the Great Wall was not a monument. It was a weapon, a warning, a living frontier. Back to the Ming Dynasty. Back to 1572. Pause. China at this point is powerful, wealthy, sophisticated, enormous. But it is also paranoid, because north of the wall, there are threats, real threats, raiders, rivals, nomadic forces who test the borders over and over. So the Ming build and reinforce the wall, section by section, tower by tower, and they place men on it, watchers, not heroes celebrated in history books, but living alarms. And in one remote region, far from the heart of the empire, there is a line of watchtowers that almost no one visits. A posting most soldiers hate because it's lonely, because the work is boring, isolated, and exhausting. And that is exactly why something like this could happen there. Because it's the kind of place where your mind starts playing tricks on you, where the wind sounds like voices, where shadows look like movement, and where, if something goes wrong, you are very far from help. To understand the disappearance, you have to picture daily life on the wall. It was not glamorous. A watchtower was made of stone and timber, cramped and freezing at night. The men rotated duties, moving between lookout, patrol, and maintenance. Weapons were always close at hand, bows, blades, and early firearms, depending on what the region had available. Signal materials were kept ready at all times: dry wood, oil, and smoke fuel. The entire system was built around one simple idea. If one tower saw danger, it warned the next, like a chain reaction stretching across mountains. It was brilliant, and it was terrifying, because if one tower went silent, the chain was broken. That is why silence was never a small thing. It was not just delayed mail. Silence meant no one was watching, no one was reporting, and no one was alive to warn the empire. Reports were expected on a regular schedule, short updates about supplies, patrols, and anything unusual. The Ming Dynasty was deeply bureaucratic. Everything was written down. So when a command post stopped receiving reports from a remote garrison, it was noticed almost immediately. At first, officials assumed a simple explanation. A messenger could have been robbed. Bad weather might have delayed travel. The men could have been dealing with a local issue. But then another report failed to arrive, and another, and another. One day was normal. A week was concerning. Several weeks without a single message meant something was seriously wrong. That was when a military investigation was ordered. When the investigation unit reached the first watchtower, they immediately knew something was wrong. The gates were not locked. They were standing open, not broken, not forced, just open. Inside, the tower was perfectly intact. No burned wood, no shattered doors, no signs of a fight. At first glance, it almost looked normal. Then they noticed the details. Food was still sitting on tables, not stored, not cleaned away, half-eaten. Bedrolls were laid out, some neatly folded, others tossed aside. Personal items were everywhere. Small things soldiers kept with them. Charms, pieces of cloth, letters. Weapons were still there. That was the strangest part. If soldiers were attacked, weapons would have been used. If they fled, weapons would have been taken. But here, everything had been left behind. It looked as if the men had simply stood up and walked away. Outside, the ground told the same story. No footprints leading away. No signs of a group moving through the area. No traces of horses or carts. It was as if more than 200 men had vanished into the air. The investigators moved from tower to tower. Every single one was the same. Intact. Supplied. Empty. No bodies. No blood. No explanation. By the time they finished searching the last tower, fear had set in. This was not an attack. This was something far stranger. When the investigation unit returned to headquarters, the officers did not know what to write. How do you explain an empty garrison? No bodies, no battle, no enemy, no escape, only silence. In the records of the Ming Dynasty, the event would later be referenced with a simple phrase: the empty garrison. Just 2 words. No detailed report, no official explanation. In an empire that recorded everything, that absence of detail was strange. Normally, if soldiers were lost, there were inquiries. If commanders failed, they were punished. If a military post collapsed, it was documented. But this time, there was no such trail. The paperwork stopped. It was as if someone had decided that the story was too dangerous to keep. Because think about what this disappearance meant. If an enemy had taken the garrison, the empire was vulnerable. If the soldiers had deserted, loyalty was in question. If something unknown had happened, fear would spread. Any of those possibilities threatened control, and control was everything to the Ming Dynasty. So instead of a public investigation, the case was quietly closed. No one was allowed to ask questions. The watchtowers were eventually restaffed. New soldiers were sent. Life on the wall continued. But the original men were never mentioned again. No memorial, no graves, no official list of the dead. It was as if they had been erased, and that is often more frightening than death itself. Because when people are erased, it means someone had the power to make them disappear. And if they could do it once, they could do it again. When there is no official explanation, theories take over. And in the case of the vanished watchers, there have been many. Some historians believe the simplest answer is the correct one, that the garrison was attacked by an enemy force. But this theory immediately runs into problems. An attack leaves evidence, broken gates, burned buildings, blood. None of that was found. And most importantly, the Great Wall had a signaling system. If even one tower had seen danger, smoke would have gone up. But no signals were ever recorded. Others suggest that the soldiers deserted. Life on the wall was brutal, cold, lonely, isolated. But 200 men deserting together would have required planning, coordination, time, and desertion leaves traces, Footprints, abandoned camps, discarded equipment. None of that was found either. Some believe the men were secretly executed by their own government. Empires have done this before, silencing witnesses, removing problems. But even executions leave bodies, mass graves, records. Here there was nothing, which leads to the darkest possibilities, that the men encounter something they could not fight, some unknown force, a disaster, a natural phenomenon, something that struck without warning and left no trace behind. The region around the wall is harsh, deep valleys, sudden storms, hidden ravines, but even nature usually leaves signs. Here the land was silent, and when the land says nothing, fear fills the gap. Because when no explanation fits, people begin to imagine what else might be out there. To this day, no graves have ever been found, no names carved into stone, no lists of the dead, no final record of what happened. Only a stretch of the Great Wall that once held hundreds of men. The Watchers did not fall in battle. They did not retreat. They vanished. And when something disappears without leaving a trace, it leaves behind something far more powerful. A question: what really happened on that remote section of the wall? Was it an enemy, a betrayal, a disaster, or something that no one wanted to write down? The truth is, we may never know, but the Great Wall still stands, stretching across mountains into the mist, and somewhere along it, there are places where the past went silent, where men stood watch one night, and were never seen again. Those are the echoes of the unknown. If stories like this keep you thinking long after the video ends, then Echoes of the Unknown is exactly where you belong. Subscribe for more true mysteries that history never explained.